Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Joy of Cooking with Michelle. Today we're doing something different. We're doing two recipes because they are so fast and easy. The first one is going to be a roasted chickpea snack. Now we're going to do the recipe. I'll show you how to roast the chickpeas, and I will tell you how long to cook them and then how you can use them once they're cooked. The other thing we're going to do is we are going to do a Caprese salad, and it's that time of year in Canada where you can buy baskets of tomatoes. So if you have an abundance of tomatoes in your garden, this is one of my favorite ways to use them. So let's get going. First of all, let me show you how to do the roasted chickpeas. Now, I have everything laid out here. First of all, I'm going to start with my chickpeas. So I have to tell you that the recipe calls for 2 cans of chickpeas. I have purchased them. I purchased these. The blue label, the blue menu is generally lower in sodium, so that's always good. And using canned chickpeas, the best thing to do is to rinse them really well to get the excess fluid off. So I have 2 cans here. I have to say it would be very easy to cut this recipe in half, and I'm going to put the recipe up after. The simplest thing we do is we take about 3 tablespoons, a little less than 1/4 cup of oil. They call for canola oil. I have olive oil because that's generally what I have in my house. And the other thing we do is we use 1/2 cup of spices. So they recommend cumin, maybe garlic, not so much the salt, but the seasonings. Garlic powder, curry, cumin. A combination of spices I think is your best bet. So what I used, also some paprika, and I had these 2 combinations from Clubhouse. So I used both of these. One's a Cajun spice, which is a collection of spicy spices together. And this other one, which I really like, it's garlic plus. So there's some garlic and some chili powders together. So what you want to do is to make it to your palate. So if you like it really spicy, make it really spicy. You can gauge how much maybe chili powder you want to add. I loved cutting it with paprika in the end because it's going to give us good color and it's going to blend with the seasonings together. So I use these 2 combos, the Cajun and the garlic. You also could use Mrs. Dash. That would be really great. And you could use that as your foundation. I love cumin. I used a lot of cumin. So what I did was I took 1/2 cup measure, and then I just put in a combination of spices that I thought would be suitable for me, that I thought I would enjoy. And this is what I came up with. And then I mixed them all together. I think the important thing to remember is just the proportion of oil to the herbs that you're using. And I would recommend probably more powdered spices and less salts. And that way when you mix it with the oil, it will blend really well. I think that's one of the best ideas. Oh, okay. So, and I think that's the first step, is to mix the oil and the spice mixture. That's what I would do. Now, I was thinking that adding the chickpeas to the oil and spice mixture would be the best way to go. But you can see what happens is it becomes very paste-like. So I think the best course of action is to take your big bowl of chickpeas, put it in a big bowl, and you will see that it's very paste-like. You can see how very pasty this is. That you're going to toss it in it, but it's going to be relatively thick. So you just have to give it a really good stir. And that's all you do, is you take the oil and the spices, and then you stir it into your chickpeas. Try to blend it the best that you can. And then the best thing to do is ahead of time, turn your oven on to 400 degrees, because you can see it doesn't take very long at all to get this together, this concoction. And so I would just say toss that really well together to try to coat the chickpeas. And then when your oven's preheated to 400 degrees, what we're going to do is we're going to roll out these chickpeas onto a cookie sheet. The best suggestion they give you is to use parchment paper. So what I would do is, in the beginning, is line my cookie sheet with parchment paper so that they don't stick. Now, this is interesting. I honestly have not made this recipe before, but I have had roasted chickpeas many, many times. And why would you pay so much to buy them pre-made when they're so easy to make? There we go. So give it a good toss. And then we're just going to spread it all out on the cookie sheet, just like this. This is so easy. And like I said, you can just cut this recipe in half if you like, and just use 1 can of chickpeas. I think that would be okay. And so we put this in the oven for 30 minutes at 400 degrees, and we let it bake. It's roasting. And then what we do is, it's not finished then. Then we keep the oven at 400 degrees, and we're going to cook it for about 20 additional more minutes. But they suggest that after the 30 minutes, at 5-minute intervals, that you check on it and you stir it. You continuously stir it. So put it in the oven the first 30 minutes non-stop. Set the timer for 30 minutes. After that, every 5 minutes, you take it out, give it a good toss so that it doesn't, burn and stick. And so you do that about 4 times for the last 20 minutes. And that's it. How easy is that? Roasted chickpeas. Now, once they're cooked, you let them cool. You could put them in a glass jar or even some little Ziploc bags. You could take some to work. You could put some in your children's lunch. They can be snacks. But the other thing I have to tell you is, it'd be really interesting for a topping on top of a stir fry or even a pasta dish. You could put some roasted chickpeas on top, and they would give a really nice crunch. I love that idea. Remember, chickpeas are a good source of protein. So if you're looking for a plant-based protein, chickpeas are fantastic. And they're also very high in fiber. So there's your first really simple and easy recipe. I'm going to put that up in its entirety so you can see. This recipe is courtesy of Pulses Canada, and I'm going to put the link to the whole cookbook for you so that you'll have that also. Great recipes. I love it, love it. Also, please always know that, like a lot of the legumes, the chickpeas, the beans, and the lentils, Canada is the major producer and exporter of these, one of the most major exporters in the whole world. So we are producing a lot of these plant-based alternatives. So I love to promote it. I love to promote alternative proteins. I find it a really easy way when I introduce more plant-based proteins into my nutrition, really easy way to keep my weight under control. And hot tip. Okay, I'm just gonna put this aside for now. And, oh, maybe I'll just pop it right into the oven right now. That's what I'll do. And then it'll give me a bit of a head start. Okay, there we go. Now, the second recipe that I wanted to do with you is also so fast and so easy. The Caprese Salad. And I wanted to show you this also because it's absolutely one of my favorites. I think you can see this relatively easily. I have a really nice dish, and when you're making this, what you want is a dish with a bit of a lip on the side, because you're going to be putting some oil and balsamic vinegar in it, and you don't want it to slip out the sides. So to start with, I find a nice dish, and I love this. This is a really great appetizer that you can make, and it's also a great way to pump up the extra vegetables in your nutrition. This is how simple this is. You need sliced tomatoes, which I have here already sliced. You need some basil leaves, which I had in my garden. You need some soft mozzarella, so either buy a soft mozzarella ball. Often you will find them in the deli, and often they might be packed even in a fluid. The other thing I love is bocconcini, which is a soft mozzarella, like cheese. And I find that if you're there, you have to be careful if you're in the grocery store, because when you're looking for this sort of mustardy yellow type bocconcini is one of the best ones to buy, because what you want is, you want the balls to be, oh well, here, I'll open it and I'll show you. You want the balls to be a good size. So you have to be careful because they come in many different sizes, and sometimes you'll find them in little itty bitty pearls, and that won't be any good for this recipe. You can't go wrong if you see bocconcini and it says medallions on the top, because the medallions would be very similar to this. They would already be pre-cut in really thin, flat slices like this. And this is what we need. So I'm using the bocconcini. You can also use soft mozzarella, and you need them thinly sliced. You need basil. You need a very nice oil. I love this oil. I saw this in the grocery store, and I know in Italy they use exactly this oil. They have it on the tables there. And also when I was in Ottawa in an Italian store, I saw this balsamic vinegar. So you need oil and balsamic vinegar. Okay, so very simply what I do is, you can use as many tomatoes as you like. If there's just yourself or even two of you, you may just simply want to have just 4 tomatoes like this. Now, if you have more people, it's always beautiful when you arrange it in a bit of a circle like this, like that. So you can make it circular, or you can just simply have 4 slices. This is 1 whole tomato. It's a small tomato though. So I think for now, just to keep it really simple, I'm just going to use 4. It's more pretty when it's in a really nice circle. Okay, so we have our tomatoes on the bottom. That's the first thing. Slice them relatively thin. And then what I like to do is I like to put the basil on next, because then the cheese will hold them down. So I put the basil leaves on top, arrange them really nicely like this. You, I'm sure, have seen this in many restaurants before. And I'm crazy about basil, so I'm going to use a lot of basil. And fresh basil is very important. It has to be fresh basil. Hopefully you still have some in your garden. You should, I do. Okay, so I just lay the basil leaves like that. And then what I do is I put the cheese on top. If you have big medallions or big slices of cheese, then you could just put one in the middle of each, like that. See? Or sometimes you can just put two, depending on how big your slices are and how big of a cheese eater you are. So the next step is, and this is not an exact science, is that I drizzle the olive oil, and what I think of is I drizzle it over top of each tomato. And I do it relatively liberally, and I'll tell you why in a second. Then balsamic comes next. I like to put the balsamic just gently over top of each of the cheese. So I use a little bit less balsamic than I do the oil. There we go. So you can see how pretty it is? The nice thing about it is that the balsamic, when you put it over top of the cheese, you can really appreciate the swirliness and the colors of how they blend together. Now, the joy of this dish, especially when you're sharing it with somebody, is that you can see on the sides and in the middle, there's, of course, extra oil and balsamic. And there's a reason for that. And that is that what you can do is you can give everybody their own separate dish. And what they can do is they can eat the tomato slice themselves. And then once you take, you'll see, well here I can do it. Once you take one of the tomato slices out, you'll see there's a small pooling there of the olive oil and the balsamic. And that's why you're a little liberal with this. But the interesting thing is that what you do is you get yourself a stick of French bread, a baguette, and you cut up some slices like this. This is actually an olive baguette. And then what you do is you take your baguette, you tear a piece off, and then you help yourself by dipping in the oil and the balsamic. It's just so delicious like that. I love it. This is one of my favorite dishes of the summer. I love this. I could eat this every day. I could eat it at lunchtime. Think about this for a minute. You have your grains with your bread, you have your protein with your cheese, and you have some vegetables. It's a nice light lunch or a fantastic addition to your dinner. So there you go. 2 quick and easy recipes. I hope you've enjoyed them, and check back so you can see the links to the Pulses cookbook and also the ingredients for the first recipe. So I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you again soon. Bye!